Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, presented by Coors Light. Go from full-time to game time. Coors Light, made to chill. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff. I am not your usual host, Will Lou. Will Lou is off today. I'm Blake Murphy. Alongside me in my usual seat is Alex Wong. Alex, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? It's a weird formation, man. What kind of basketball formation is this? Me and you.
I don't know. I feel like I'm dribbling left-handed though. I guess I'm more of a lefty on the show because I'm on the left side and now I'm on the right side.
I should have just kept you in this seat. I feel like I guess we could have done that.
It's fine.
Now we're all uncomfortable, bro.
Yeah.
What is this leg? What is this leg thing, man? What do you do with your legs usually?
I don't know.
Just put them here.
Now I'm learning that the trio of Will, Ailish, and Kipper, I think are messier than me, Bourne, and Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Because that side's always really tidy. And this side is there's garbage tucked in everywhere. There's loose cords everywhere.
Yeah.
But we'll make it work. We got a big show, so we'll make it work. Charania is going to join us around 2:15. Lindsay Dunn's going to come on with us around 2:30. We're going to help the Raptors coaching staff build a better pregame playlist than what they've been rolling with. We'll ask Lindsay to explain that, and we'll go into it. And then Samson Folk will join us for the final hour. We'll go deep on a number of Raptors topics. Tee up tonight's Raptors-Nets in-season tournament. For the Raptors, their in-season tournament finale, Brooklyn still has something on the line. Brooklyn, Orlando, Boston, all still potential winners of the Raptors Group C. A lot of in-season tournament stuff we can kick around throughout the show. First, though, Alex, so you're wearing a Raptors toque. I know you're a toque guy. I was going through, when the weather turns, I usually go through my closet, make a donation bin run or whatever.
Nice.
And in bringing out my winter stuff, I realized I have a toque that is an extremely limited edition run. So do you remember back, this was still in the Kyle DeMar era.
Mm-hmm.
You know how sometimes they will give out gear to media to try to entice the All-Star votes and stuff?
Yes.
So even though I don't have a vote, I have a toque that all it is a black toque, but a little Kyle Lowry cartoon head on the front of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you donating that?
I mean, no, I'm not donating. I could donate it to the Alex Wong Gear Fund.
Yeah, that would be I would gladly accept that.
Yeah, I think I wore it one time.
Raptors have done some cool stuff with that, giveaway stuff over the years, when they make the All-Star pushes. I know they did some T-shirts, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah, I've got a Pascal Siakam hoodie.
Kawhi was on a hoodie, too, I want to say. Maybe or not. Was that not Kawhi?
I can't remember.
And then they handed out, I don't know if this is officially by the team, but they had, the sauce for Pascal as well, hot sauce.
I think that was actually through Nando's.
It was a collab.
Yeah,
it was an official collab.
I don't think that was All-Star related, although it surely didn't hurt.
Yeah, what can we do this year for someone like Grady Dick? Who you saw last night at Raptors 905 as they fell to 0-8?
Yeah, maybe if Grady gets it going and gets back to the NBA, we can make a rookie-sophomore game push, but I don't think we have to worry about an all-star push for now. Yeah, 905 fall to 0-8. I've mentioned it on the show before. They are in a bad way. So last night, they have Grady Dick down there. They have all three two-ways down there, and still by the end of the game, they were down to 6 players.
Yeah.
They have had that many injuries. Marquise Noel is out. Javon Freeman Liberty fouled out last night. Ron Harper Jr. left the game injured. So they were down to, even if the plan wasn't to get Grady 38 minutes, they needed him. They had no players left. Alex, it was not a very good Grady Dick night. We had kicked around very briefly yesterday. They went 1 for 12 on the weekend. A little bit better in this one, 5 for 21. In the second half, he did a little bit of other stuff, at least, tipping out a couple offensive rebounds, couple steals on transition defense. He got blown by at one point, caught on a screen a little bit and recovered to block the shot, from behind, which was really impressive. But 2 games in for the most part, and I wrote about this for sportsnet.ca, so people can go and, I talked to Grady about a one-on-one after, talked about where his confidence is at, what are you trying to tweak mechanically and stuff like that. But I want to ask you, Alex, you see a guy go down, 13th overall pick, just turned 20, only 1 year of college. He goes down and he struggles this poorly in his first 2 905 games. What is your read on that? Because I feel like, I've been doing 905 for 8 seasons now. The ups and downs are a little more normal to me, but this stands out a lot, I would imagine, to the larger NBA media base.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not really freaked out about this or trying to freak out about it. I know, he came in advertised as a shooter, and the shot just wasn't there early on. I think we saw some good activity from him here and there, with the Raptors. And, obviously using this stretch in the schedule to get him some run here with the 905 and even seeing the shooting struggles here. I know you'd probably talk about it more in the second hour with Samson too. Like, I know people have pointed out that maybe the shooting mechanics have changed. And that's where my concern comes in when it comes to like confidence and stuff. And I know you had a really great quote from Grady. Basically, he said that, like, shooters shoot. That he's going to
shoot the next 10. I don't
he's
care.
Gonna shoot the next
what
10
he said.
Because that's the mentality you expect from someone, a player like Grady, right? So I'm overall not too concerned. I mean, if I were to be like extreme, my first example, and I think a lot of people always think about like a Markelle Fultz when he came in, and so much was made about the change in his shooting mechanics, and we know what he went through in his career. I'm not saying this is that, but it's like if you want to go to the most extreme, that would be the most worrisome scenario. But I think this is just a rookie working his way through things, and I expect Grady to be back with the Raptors and contributing soon.
And mechanically, I did ask Grady about this. I asked head coach, Raptors 905 head coach Eric Khoury, who, in addition to being the 905 head coach, is one of the Raptors player development coaches throughout the offseason. So he told us that actually he was the first person Grady Dick saw for his pre-draft workout. Like, Eric's the one running that workout. So Grady and Eric Khoury have been working together since Grady got in the door. And they're not, I wouldn't even call it a mechanical change. It was to the point that Grady was like, no, I haven't really changed anything about my shot. And the Raptors' explanation was a little different. But basically, when he is shooting off of movement, his footwork is so good that he naturally gets like a nice, wide, strong base to lift up out of. And when he is a little more stationary and catch and shoot, he has a tendency for his stance to get a little narrower. And then what Eric Khoury told me is that makes the ball come off a little flat. And then to account for that, maybe you're using a little bit too much arm in your shooting motion. So all they're doing is trying to remind him when he's stationary, when he's catch and shoot in the corner or something like that. Hey, same idea as when you come off the ball. Get that wide, strong stance. So there's nothing really. No one seems to think anything's wrong mechanically. The shots just haven't dropped. There was Grange is on the road with the Raptors, and he passed along a great quote from Darko yesterday. Grange asked him for me, and Darko said, yeah, like he talked to Grady after the first game, and Grady was like, every single shot I took before the game went down. And then none of them went down in the game. And like, again, still shooting 5 of 21 and 1 of 12 is bad. You shoot 6 of 33 over 2 games. There's no way around it. But I think at least, he had one shot where he gets kind of trapped on the side. He does one escape dribble, and then he's like fading to his left out of bounds in the corner and sinks that 3 over a contest. And like, if you are a shooter and you still have the ability to make that kind of shot, I'm going to maintain confidence that the simpler stuff will come around.
Yeah. And we talk about sample size on here all the time and stuff. And like, shooters are allowed to, even in a Raptors 905 environment, a G League environment, someone like Grady is allowed to have like 2 bad shooting games, right? I think all the other stuff, like you talking to him, the confidence and all that stuff, that's the more important thing. I'm not really super worried about what the numbers look like in the box score right now.
Yeah, and like, look, there are some of the same concerns that we had at the NBA. Like, he's not a good defender right now. Like the GOAT. Real team name, Capital City Go-Go.
Yeah.
They were targeting him, obviously. I have some questions for the Washington Wizards after watching a chunk of the Wizards-Pistons game when I got home last night and watching the Go-Go twice in a row here.
Congrats to the Wizards, by the way, with the victory.
Yeah, they're now 3-14. The Pistons are 2-15. The Pistons on pace for 9.5 wins, so just half a win off the all-time worst record.
What was their over-under? It got to be in the mid-20s or something.
Yeah, it was low 20s. I think 24.5.
That might clinch by like January, man.
Yeah. Anyway, my question for the Wizards would be, Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Hamidou Diallo are down on your G League team. They are better than most of the players on your NBA team. Like, Hamidou Diallo was like, this is another part of Grady Dick struggling, is like Hamidou Diallo is not out of the NBA because of his defense. He is out of the NBA because of the offensive profile, and that just like never really came around. The shooting never really came around.
Sounds like another player the Raptors should pick up.
So 2 summers ago, the Pistons signed him to like a 2-year, $10 million deal. I thought for sure he was going to be like the next Stanley Johnson-Rondae kind of signing.
Listen, man,
like, maybe we could fix him.
You tell me, the Raptors are classic. We can fix him, man. It's actually kind of wild.
Okay, so that's the 905 wrap. Again, I wrote about Grady Dick at sportsnet.ca.
Yes, check it out, sportsnet.ca.
It is the in-season tournament tonight. We're going to talk to Shams in a couple minutes, but let's set the stage for the in-season tournament tonight.
Yes.
It is the final night of group play. Only 2 teams have clinched their spot in the quarterfinals so far.
Wow.
And 12 teams have been eliminated. But what that means is there are 16 teams left fighting for 4 pool titles and the 2 wildcard spots. Is this enough? Like, do you think the small 4-game window with these tiebreaker scenarios, like, are you fired up for the games tonight? Are you interested more than you thought you would have been?
Fired up on a scale of 1 to CM Punk making his return to WWE. I'm like a 6. I want to say 6 to 7. First of all, should we have like Michael Grange or someone tell Darko tonight pregame that the Raptors have been eliminated?
I think they're aware now.
Okay.
But the interesting thing tonight though is there are scenarios where the Raptors can impact the Nets, Magic, and Celtics. So the Raptors may. And like we said this yesterday, tongue in cheek, of like you want to build good habits for the in-season tournament stuff. Yeah. But like they actually might play to the buzzer no matter what the score is, because here's the scenario. If the Nets win and the Celtics win, then the Nets, Magic, and Celtics are all tied at the top of the pool, and it goes to point differential. If the Celtics lose, they're out. But the Nets could still tie the Magic, and then the Nets actually win a tiebreaker with the Magic.
Man.
If the Raptors beat the Nets and the Celtics win, the Magic win a tiebreaker with the Celtics. So the Raptors can knock the Celtics out by beating the Nets.
I think that should be part of the pregame speech from Darko. And I was telling you off air too, like they should do the final night of group play, like how they do, I think, the final day of like the baseball season and stuff. Like have all the games tip off at the same time. At least like you mentioned this, like Eastern Conference, have them all tip off maybe at 8 or something like that, 7:38.
So the 5 Eastern Conference games do tip off at 7:30. The West has staggered times. Okay. So we won't, some of these West teams
at least for the East, we'll get that. And I want some like, like scoreboard watching of like, oh my God, the Nets need to score 10 more points here to win the point differential. So yeah, back to your question about the excitement. I think this is exciting. Like once you start seeing about clinching scenarios, the fact that there's still so many teams fighting for spots, like I think even the people that could sat here and said, like even myself saying, oh, I don't care about the in-season tournament, whenever there's something to play for, like you're gonna tap in and really watch. So I do think it's an exciting night for the NBA tonight.
Here's a question. So there could be running up of the score for point differentials because, again, Boston is playing the Bulls. They're not going to know how many points they need until the Raptors-Brooklyn game is over.
Boston so DeMar has incentive to run up the score.
Just in case.
Okay.
Just in case. Because if Boston and Brooklyn both win, so it's coming down to 3-team point differential tiebreaker. So run it up just in case.
Okay, so potential fights, DeMar versus Sam Hauser tonight.
So this is what I was going to ask you. Which team in the NBA do you think would be the biggest babies about having the score run up on them for point differential?
Who's got like those like real old vets on their teams? Like, I know Udonis Haslem is like retired now, but it's like that type of guy is the guy that's gonna get mad at the in-season tournament. Yeah. So I'm gonna need some teams with like some vets on there. But right now Chicago Boston is profiling as the number one fight scenario that's gonna happen. Yeah. Because DeMar's already voices displeasure about this. Yeah. And once again, I'm not anti-DeMar, but he should be fine for saying the in-season tournament doesn't matter. Yeah. At the very least, Adam Silver got to give him a call. If he can call the Raptors show, he can call DeMar.
Yeah, that's I agree with that one. So just to set the table, the Lakers have clinched in the West.
So they're chill.
They are. And then there are 6 other teams fighting for.
Wait, the Lakers are playing again tonight after their 44-point loss? Okay,
no, they're done. They've clinched. Okay. They're 4-0. The Lakers and the Pacers are the only teams that have clinched.
Okay, so they're done.
Everyone else, good. I mean, there are a handful of teams that have been eliminated. Yeah. Raptors, Bulls, Pistons, Wizards, shocker.
What's the most interesting battle for you? Like, which group is most interesting to you right now? Because I know there's like a Minnesota thing going on with Houston too,
Minnesota,
right?
Sacramento, Golden State are all there.
Houston's group is kind of interesting too, right?
Yeah, so Houston's group is interesting because they can, anywhere that a team controls their own fate, it gets interesting. So Houston is in a scenario where they control their own fate to, like, if they win, they're going to jump the Pelicans.
Okay. See, that's fun.
Now
that's
Dallas
fun.
is already out.
Yeah. As like a Rockets fan, it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Win and you're in. Win and you're in scenario.
And like, if you're the Rockets, you're appreciating this great start that you're off to, but you're probably still being realistic about like, hey, a deep playoff run is probably not that likely. Yeah. Winning the in-season tournament, though, I think that's possible for a team like the Rockets. And that's kind of, I had picked the Magic to win the in-season tournament when we kicked it around at the start of the year. And like, that's the kind of team, the Pacers, who are 4-0. And again, maybe they could make it to the second round of the playoffs, upset someone, get to the conference finals with this offense. But realistically, winning the in-season tournament could be kind of the biggest thing that they do this year, other than just taking a step forward in the standings. So I think that should be pretty cool. Milwaukee and Miami are also in like If Milwaukee wins, they're in. If Miami wins, they're playing the tiebreaker game. So any
Hmm.
situation like that, most of the games tonight have some stakes,
Yeah,
which
no,
is which is cool.
I think it'll be fun, and it'll be our last time seeing some of these in-season tournament courts, except in Dallas, my brother.
Yeah, the Mavericks will not be using, according to our pal Tim McMahon, the Mavericks court for the in-season tournament was so bad the first time and was so bad in trying to get it ready for tonight. They are not using that court against the Houston Rockets. The Mavs have already been eliminated, so we won't see it in the quarterfinals either. So yeah, that's it for the Mavericks. Someone asked me this question yesterday, and
What's
I
up?
didn't have the answer offhand, but I wonder your take on it. Those games that teams like the Raptors are playing Wednesday and Friday next week.
Next week, yeah.
So games that are in the in-season tournament week, but only count to the regular season. You think they'll use the in-season tournament courts just to get another use out of them?
I don't know. I feel like it might devalue the courts, man. Because obviously it's like you mentioned it might be like a Toronto Detroit, might be a Toronto Washington type game.
Yeah.
And since it doesn't count for anything,
Just regular season.
yeah. So yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just very curious. I need to set my life up, so I need to know who they're playing.
Yeah. We know it'll be Wednesday and Friday at least, and that
yeah.
only one Eastern Conference team is going to get the bad luck of having to go on the West Coast.
Yeah, and it's also weird because the finals doesn't count for
Right.
the regular season. But we can talk about that after.
Yeah, and like the playing game, the stats just don't exist. Not tonight, but later this week, a couple of key players around the NBA are coming back to health, as first reported by our pal Shams Charania, senior NBA insider for The Athletic and Stadium and co-host of the Run It Back show. He joins us now. Shams, what's up, man? How are you?
What's going on, Blake? Former Athletic co-friend, co-worker. Appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Miss teaming up on some stories with you. You had a couple this week about guys returning to health. CJ McCollum nearing a return for the Pelicans. Jamal Murray, you said it's eating at him to be sitting out. He's taking warm-up shots in street clothes. When you look at the top of the West, man, it's already so tight. How much fun is it, and how huge is it for these two teams to get a couple of all-stars back in McCollum and Jamal Murray?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the case of Jamal Murray, I think he's more day-to-day. We'll see whether he's going to be back on Wednesday against the Rockets here tomorrow, or could it be Friday in their in-season tournament game on the road in Phoenix. I think both are possible, but it's really day by day how he feels. He's coming back from a hamstring injury. And yeah, it is eating at him. He's been out for the last several weeks. So I think his return is imminent. Is this going to be about which day he feels good? CJ McCollum, I'm more sure about. He will be, unless there's a setback, I'm told back in the lineup most likely either tomorrow at home against the Sixers or Friday against the Spurs. And this is a Pelicans team, I think, that is playing better. They've won 5 of their last 8 games. You're seeing Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram. They're playing together cohesively, probably as good as they have been ever. And I think Zion Williamson, him at point guard, that's something that we've seen a lot. I know he's embraced it. He wants to play that position. And so seeing CJ McCollum transition back to this team, they need shooting. Last night in Utah, they could have used a spot-up shooter in a couple of those crunch time moments. And so getting CJ McCollum back will be big for the Pelicans.
Yeah, it'd be big for the Pelicans, big for the Nuggets to get Murray back, and makes the Western Conference crazier, where there are, 11 or 12 teams that think they should be playoff teams, 7 or 8 of those that probably have championship aspirations. It's a little early for this, Shams. I know December 15th is kind of the date when the trade season really picks up, but how much are you anticipating that this is going to be a pretty crazy year, December 15th to the trade deadline, given how much is at stake for a lot of these Western Conference teams?
It's going to be an active, I think, trade deadline. But again, how active, how many moves? There's going to be moves, but how much will it happen close to the deadline? I think because a lot of teams also have free agents that can't get traded until December 15th. Some in the case of the Lakers, let's say if the Lakers want to get involved with a guy like Zach LaVine, which I do think they will express interest in Zach LaVine, a few of their contracts to get up to $40 million. Guys like Rui Hachimura, D'Angelo Russell. Rui Hachimura can't be traded until mid-January. D'Angelo Russell not till mid-December. So there are a few teams in that similar boat where you need to wait until these trade restrictions come up. But I think overall there will be moves, and I think the parity of the league helps. But I expect it'll be closer to the deadline. We haven't seen him trade in December for 2 years now.
I know you have said other places at Stadium, at The Athletic, on Run It Back, that, the Lakers are one of the teams you'd expect to be interested in Zach LaVine. Again, we're a little away from that, but given that that news has been out there a while, you reported that a couple of weeks ago now. What is the sense that you get of what that market would be like? What other teams other than the Lakers could be involved there?
There will be a market. The question is how much appetite will there be for Zach LaVine's contract, right? Because overall, as a player, we know 20+ point per game scorer. He can score the ball, he can fill it up. He's a two-time All-Star, but he's in the second season of a 5-year, $215 million max contract, and so there are definitely teams that have a level of weariness to it. But I think when you think about the Lakers, you think about the Sixers, two teams that obviously have championship aspirations. And I do expect there to be more teams that show interest. But again, matching the Bulls' price, what they want in a deal, that's going to be important as well, because this is a guy that the Bulls value. They want to see a return for Zach LaVine, but will that match a team that might just view him? Could it just be a salary dump? That could be what other teams might view. But I think finding price point versus a team that has a desire, that has a true championship aspiration this season, I think we'll get more clarity over the next month or so.
So Toronto show here, Canadian show here. Got to ask you a little about the Raptors. I know we spent all of last year kind of like, okay, what are the Raptors going to do? What direction are they going to pick? Will Siakam or Anunoby or Trent be available? They ended up adding Jakob Poeltl 4 picks. But this year, it seems like we're headed for the same kind of thing. Will they trade Siakam? Is OG headed into unrestricted free agency available? Same thing for Gary Trent. Do you expect this to be another year where the contending teams are kind of waiting out the Raptors? Hey, what are these guys going to do?
There's no question. I think Toronto, because of guys like Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, two guys that are pending free agents, right? And I think that plays a part in it, in guys being available or not being available. And like you said, like last season, for sure, teams were looking at Toronto's situation. And I reported in The Athletic over the summer, the Hawks made serious offers. There were serious conversations there for Pascal Siakam. There were offers made around DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin, draft compensation. And there were some very intense conversations had around Summer League. And ultimately, the deal did not happen. Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, they kept that team as is. And I think now when teams look at this roster, Scotty Barnes is the one guy you can say right now he's not going anywhere. But beyond that, for sure, I think teams have their eye across this roster. The talent has never been, I think, an issue for the Raptors over the last couple of years. From a roster component, I think they've had the pieces. It's about, can they gel? Can they come together? Do they fit?
And the timeline, does a Siakam timeline match everyone else? So we'll see. We'll have these conversations again before February. Shams, before I let you go here, you mentioned Summer League. That's obviously, all the GMs, all the newsbreakers like yourself in one place, all the agents. This is the first year that we've had the in-season tournament, but it's going to take place on a neutral site. It's going to take place in Vegas, which is the NBA's like unofficial home for these things. Could you see the in-season tournament growing into kind of an unofficial like GM meetings that kickstarts trade season moving forward?
I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, I think the G League Showcase, in Orlando this year, has been in Vegas, has been Santa Cruz in the past. I think that is something of a winter meetings in the NBA. If there is, something similar to Summer League, I don't know yet how many teams, other executives are going to really show up to the in-season tournament yet. But again, I don't know. I haven't gone yet, but hopefully I'll find out soon.
Are you digging the in-season tournament, by the way? Like, are you looking forward to the games aspect of being in Vegas, not just the catching up with executives aspect?
Well, in talking to players, I think there's definitely a level of excitement for the in-season tournament. A lot of it is to do with the prize money. And when I was reporting out the CBA, the $500,000 prize per player for the in-season tournament, and then I think it lowers to $200K for the runner-up. Like this is substantial amounts of money. Whether you're Anthony Edwards, whether you're LeBron James, whether you're a max player, or whether you're at the end of the bench. Obviously, for the end of the bench, it means a lot more. But guys are really, I think, motivated by it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what a two-way guy or someone who's on a non-guaranteed deal. We got to get a media bonus in there as well. Shams Charania, man, thanks so much for taking the time out. Keep up all the great work over at the Athletic Stadium and on Run It Back. Appreciate you making time out.
Alex, Blake, thanks again. Thank you.
Shams Charania, senior NBA insider for the Athletic and Stadium, co-host of the Run It Back show. I think we're headed for another January, February where people like Shams are reporting, hey, everyone is waiting to find out if the Raptors guys are available or not. Who knows if they actually will be? That's something the Raptors have played close to the chest for a couple of trade seasons now. We're going to take a break. Something the Raptors are not playing close to the chest is what they're doing to try to pump up before the game. Lindsay Dunn of City News TO talked to the Raptors coaches about what goes into their playlist selection. We're going to talk to her about that when we come back. We're going to build our own playlist. Lindsay's also doing the 905 sideline reporting this year, so we'll see what vibe she's gotten around the 905 this year, and Grady Dick as well. Lindsay Dunn joins us next as the Raptors show continues on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network and Sportsnet 360. I'm Blake Murphy alongside Alex Wong. Will Lou off today. So momentarily here, we're going to tag in our friend Lindsay Dunn of City News TO and of Raptors 905. Lots to ask her about. Alex, we just talked to Shams Charania. Didn't debrief with you coming out of that. What did you make of how he set up? I mean, the emphasis really seems to be from people like Shams that we've talked to that the 500,000, even if you're a guy who makes 40 million, like 500,000 is 500,000. That's my biggest takeaway from the in-season tournament reactions so far.
See, I got a theory about that in terms of like, I know I've heard star players get really excited about the 500,000 as well. LeBron, I think Dame Lillard has talked about the 500K as
Dennis
well.
Schroeder.
Yeah. See, I don't want to lump Schroeder into this theory, but my thing is like, if those star players are excited about the 500K, they might be like cheap spenders in real life because they're excited to get that 500K.
We know that about LeBron though.
Do we? Are there facts?
There was speaking of playlists, actually.
Yeah.
Back in his second stint with the Cavs, when they were here, I remember him getting teased because
he doesn't use Spotify Premium.
He doesn't pay for premium, so you can't order your playlist. It'll play it in random no matter what.
So you're saying my theory actually has legs. Like
can't do the $11 a month.
That's why he doesn't know any of the lyrics. But like, yeah, this is my theory. Obviously for, like you mentioned, the two-way players and a bench guys. My other thing is, like, if you're LeBron and you guys win the in-season tournament, like, I think LeBron, AD, and even Austin Reeves, these guys should give the money to the end of bench guys.
So it's an interesting...
Is that even allowed, I guess, like in the CBA? I don't know.
I mean, I think in the CBA, probably not. There's probably not language about it. But the way it works in the playoffs, we talked about, what the playoff pool is in your NBA Finals pool and stuff like that when we were setting up the in-season tournament. The players have some discretion over how that gets split up.
Yeah.
Obviously the captains of your team, the leaders of your team are going to, kind of handle that. I'm sure if the Raptors had gotten there, it's probably a Garrett Temple, who's also a big part of the union, making sure all of that stuff is, equitable and things like that. But yeah, there is some player discretion on the team side. So we haven't heard word there is. It sounds like it's 500,000 flat across, but that's crazy. Like a two-way player this year will, if they maximize their two-way contract, will get $560K.
Yeah.
So you're almost doubling your salary.
Yeah.
Those guys are often playing with $0 guaranteed in their contract. Like Marquise Noel only has $75K guaranteed.
Right.
If you were to, and this is the same for two ways around the league, and who knows, maybe teams decide, hey, if our two ways aren't up with us, they're not getting a share or something like that. But, the minimum contract for an undrafted free agent on a real contract is $1.1 million. So even then you're adding significantly more to your pocket. But I do think you're right that there are some people who, you know what? Actually, there's a joke about this. Did you ever watch Trainwrecked?
Yes.
The movie with Bill Hader and LeBron James.
LeBron and Amari Stoudemire.
Yeah. And Bill Hader's a doctor and like LeBron's his best friend. LeBron won't pick up the tab when they're out for breakfast because he's like, no, he's like pulling out the receipt and like, what did each of us get? And splitting it up that way. And I wonder if like that's a gag in there because LeBron is like that in real life.
Listen, man, I've heard some stories about these star players and how they tip when they're out, but obviously can't air them out on here. But just have a theory about that, man. Let's track down the players who are more excited about the 500K and the others. And sometimes you got to think about too, like these guys obviously have like huge kind of crews, like an entourage, like group of friends around them. 500K would go a long way. Take care of your friends and stuff.
Next time especially, you're spending a weekend in Vegas, right?
Like Phil Jackson just now. I was like, these guys all have their own entourage. LeBron's never coming on this show.
Next time we get Garrett Temple, if we get him again this year.
Yeah. Are we going to do an IQ test? We should We should like test him, make him like write the LSATs on air or something.
Yeah, we'll help him out off air. We look 159 is a good score. He's doing all right without us. But I wonder if we could get out of him who the cheapest teammate he's played with is.
That is actually like the number one thing I want to know, just like from any player. And we have like so many great player podcasts now. That like
Jeff Teague would spill for sure.
Oh, Jeff Teague would spill for sure, man. Well, as we continue to try to sort out this Lindsay Dunn situation, I did want to talk to you about last night too. What is this Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan revenge game that I was watching last night?
Yeah. So this is on the heels, by the way, of a Reggie Jackson and Kentavious Caldwell Pope revenge game where the Nuggets beat the Pistons without Jokic and without Jamal Murray. Last night it was, of course, those two guys doing it against the Clippers. Clippers, no Jokic, no Murray, and the Clippers were not competitive against the Nuggets down the stretch. So the Nuggets won the fourth quarter by 20 points to take that game back.
I'm officially worried about my my championship pick of the Clippers. I just want to sound the alarms. But we finally have Lindsay, friend of the program, City News, sports and music, journalist, Raptors 905, sideline reporter. What's going on, Lindsay? Great lighting. You got more Riz than Shams. Yeah.
Whoa, I think it's the first time everyone said Riz about me, but also I love that you like this Lindsay Dunn problem or situation. That's like the first time I've ever really had drama around me.
Well, I was told in the group chat there was no audio or video. So that to me sounds like a situation.
Yeah. I'm a situation.
Yeah.
All right, Lindsay. So you are a sports and music reporter at City News TO. We're going to hit both sports and music in this segment. We're going to start on sports, though. You're obviously you're wearing the NBA Jam Sue Bird Stewie t-shirt. We're going to start with not WNBA, but G League. So we were both down at the game last night. You are the 905 sideline reporter this year for a large handful of the games down at Paramount Fied Food Center. Before we get into the Grady Dick specifics, how is that going? How are you enjoying it?
Thanks for asking. You guys know me both well enough. I have no filters, so I'll just be honest. The first game that I did at their home opener, I don't think I've ever been that sweaty in my life. So I'm just being how I am, and it went well. I didn't swear on air. They had a fun walk-off interview at half because it was only one of two times so far this season that they've been leading at the half. But everyone, on the team, around the team, the crew I work with, they're a lot of fun, and the season ticket holders that sit by where I sit, it's honestly been so much fun and a joy to be doing these games, even though the record right now, well, it's not so fun.
It's not. They're 0-8. It's been a tough watch. It's been last night was the first one that I got out to this year. Usually I'm out at more than that. Tough energy, and again, for anyone who doesn't know, this is not necessarily a talent and execution thing. They're using emergency call up. They're in Greensboro and having to Uber players in from Charlotte to have enough people to play. So, Lindsay, I mean, how are we even able to evaluate? Obviously, the G League is way more about figuring out what's happening individually, developmentally, than what the team record is. I'm having trouble doing that. Are you having trouble figuring out, other than Mo Gay being really good? It's hard to get a read on these guys.
Yeah, Mo G has just been phenomenal so far. But you're right, it is hard to get a read on these guys and these teams because half of them are in or out of the lineup every time. Like last night, Jason Page also left the game with an ankle injury, and you kind of saw him bringing that a little bit of spark to the team when they needed it in that second half where they've been struggling so far through these first 8 games. But it's really hard to get a read on the team. But I did like seeing that there is some positivity, I know, surrounding not the great record, but that they are trying to develop and work on their game and work as a team, that they're still kind of believing in the system. And I know that would be hard to do for anybody that's 0-8 in the team, but it's really, you're right, hard to get a read on this team, what they're doing. But there has been some sparks of greatness, or you could see potential greatness, especially like you mentioned for Moji.
Yeah, and the nice thing if you're in the G League, if you're trying to be positive long term, is, well, guess what? You get a schedule reset a third of the way through the season. There is a first chunk of the schedule that concludes with the G League showcase, and then the regular season starts up in late December, early January. So you actually can think that way. Lindsay, being around these guys, I haven't been around a ton, so I haven't gotten to know them personally. Mo G seems to have a pretty big and positive personality. Justice Winslow is Justice Winslow. We know pretty well. Is there anyone, you've been drawn to or has, stood out to you personality wise around these guys?
Well, the worst answer right now is you're not going to like this, is I think all of them.
Okay.
And that's also why I love the G League and the 905 is because you're right. It's all about the developmental part of it. You're seeing all of them kind of work towards, the goal of getting to the NBA or improving something on their game. But you already mentioned it. Moji has just been a firecracker for this team since they started, and he brings such a positivity. And he has even mentioned about them really kind of struggling in that second half that you kind of let it go. There'll always be another game, and then you try to work towards that one. He's not going to let it weigh him down because, immediately you don't want to lose, and you just kind of want to go and look at film, but he's trying to stay positive, take some notes out of it, and work towards the next game. So he's been great to see on there as well. Kobe Simmons, who, you've mentioned, he just was brought into the 905 last week in a trade. I really have loved the spark he's brought with his personality, and that's someone that I don't really know, but I'm excited to see how he's going to impact this squad because it's already been pretty impactful in 2 games.
And then there's Grady Dick, who I know you've done some fun stuff with in preseason and over the course of practices this year. More on the on-court side, though, what have you made of these first 2 games? The stat lines are the stat lines. We talked about it a little bit earlier. What's your read on where Grady Dick is at right now?
Well, I honestly was nervous for him after that first game. When you guys talk about those stat lines, they were not pretty and they were everywhere. People that don't follow the 905 or honestly didn't know it existed, they were talking about it. And I was really enjoyed to see how he handled it. He had a much better game yesterday. Yeah, I'm sure people wanted even higher stats, but he said, he kind of stayed off of social media. He was listening to his close circle and just wanting to build on that and improve his game. And we saw him between game 1 and game 2 become so much more aggressive, which is something they wanted to see from him. And his shot was falling not quite as much as they would have liked, but I really enjoyed seeing just how more aggressive he was, especially in that second game than we saw in that first game. That wasn't an ideal 905 debut.
All right, Lindsay, here's the theory for why the 905 aren't getting it done and why the Raptors have started games slowly so far this season. It's a playlist issue. You talked to all the Raptors coaches, including Darko, a number of the assistants, about what goes into the pregame playlists that the Raptors coaches create. Can you walk us through a little bit for anyone who didn't see the video on your Twitter, which they can find at Lindsay Dunn TV or on City News TO website? Can you walk us through a little bit of this high energy playlist that, I think we're going to have to pick apart a little bit?
We absolutely need to, and I'm glad you brought this up because, Jama Malalela, the saint that we all know that he is, I just wanted to find out, how his pregame changed this year with the Raptors compared to being with Golden State, and his first stint with the Raptors. And he mentioned how, they have a playlist and everyone gets to pick a song. And when you get your song and it's on, you really got to get at it. I'm trying to put this all into context for people that don't know what the songs are yet. Then Pat Delaney revealed that it's called a high energy playlist. So all of that in mind, Pat Delaney's song, a lot of Bruce Springsteen, like Glory Days.
Yeah.
Can you imagine him getting it? So then, Jama said, you got some 90s hip hop in there. You got some Biggie, which, absolutely will get some people hype. We've heard this in different locker rooms in different sports. Darko, I was waiting to ask this question. Full disclosure, I'm full team Darko. I bought into his system and him as a human. He's so wonderful, nice, and positive to be around. His song was Bella Ciao from, if you've seen Heist, the TV show. It's like, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao, Ciao. I know, he saw it in my face because my reaction was, what? Don't get me wrong, in the series and all that, it really amps them up. But then I got into the visualization of seeing him around Gemma, Pat, and the rest of the coaches all in a circle, just kind of huddling up and yelling it at each other. I'm like, that has to be the most random and wild playlist song I've ever heard for a coaching staff or player in any sport, trying to amp them up. And hey, for each their own, but I'm curious to see how the other coaches react to it.
No.
Yeah, it's betting a little bit on, hey, do you know your 19th century Italian labor politics? Because, it started as a protest song. So, I get that element of it. But,
Garrett Temple over here?
Yeah, Alex, this has got to be a thumbs down for you, right?
No, I think the big flaw for them is, playlists are very personal things, right? These are songs that you listen to, that you have a personal connection to. Their biggest mistake to start was doing a group playlist. I can count the number of people that I would want to have a group playlist and shared songs with on one finger. And that's Enes Esmer. We have a 90s hip hop list that we share. But it's like, no, but it's like you're trying to get a team hyped and you everybody's got their own little eclectic, like, selection. There's no flow to this. There's no rhythm to it. And it sounds exactly like how the Raptors play in the first quarter. So, I think we are onto something about this playlist problem, guys.
Okay, so Lindsay, you're obviously a big music person. You cover music for City News TO. There are a ton of vinyl behind you. Do you have any sort of like playlist principles when you sit down and make a playlist? And I guess to Alex's point, would you group playlist, or is that too personal an exercise?
All day, every day, because I think there's nothing more fun than absolutely smack talking somebody about their terrible trash song choice. So yes, like we will have a great song.
Sorry, not all of us have interviewed Lil Yachty. All right, Lindsay?
And Dolly Parton.
Yeah. God, the range is crazy.
You got to work 9 to 5. Come on.
I work 2 to 4. Yeah.
If that, just kidding. I'm just kidding. Throwing some shade. But absolutely, I need some beats immediately. There's one song, and I feel like if it does not get you hyped up, it doesn't get you pumped up, we can't be friends, and I'm judging you. And it's Space Jam by Quad City DJ. Like, I even walked down the aisle to this. I've shared this on the show before. That song, and so many people don't, it gets you going. She got like it going right away. It's got a kind of a callback song. So it's amazing. I think it's a great choice.
Would we be worried about that song being too era specific? So this is maybe the issue you run into with the 90s hip hop. No. Certainly with Bruce Springsteen. There was obviously
classics all time.
Okay.
Classics only for you.
Okay.
My song, my go-to song. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah. What is your go-to song? I'm nervous.
For pregame, it would be a Blur Song 2. Yeah.
What are you, taking an offensive zone face-off in the second period of a hockey game?
That's such a hype song, man. I remember playing NHL video games to that, too. Man.
Yeah.
For those that don't know how it goes, can you give us a little example?
No, that's all. No free karaoke, no free feet. Yeah, that's the rules.
You know the backstory of that song, right?
No, I don't.
So they put the album together, and the record company was like, there's something missing. We want we don't think there's a single here. And the reason it's called Song 2 is like they just threw something together that they thought was silly as
okay, that's amazing.
Like ribbing the record company, and then the record company loved it and wanted to release it as their first single.
Oh man, this makes it my favorite song now. It's got the pushing back against authority angle too. Yeah. I love that. What about you?
Jam, but
what's up?
I think though it's interesting about it is like the playlist, if you're going to do it and you call it high energy, you kind of all have to understand what you think high energy means. Like all of us, like it's a tempo in it, or it's like you're doing energy. It doesn't have to be era or like 90s or whatever.
Yes, there has to be a theme. There has to be a theme, a focus.
Like high energy, like it's just so disjointed. Like that would be the worst DJ ever when you're going from Bruce Springsteen to Biggie to Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao.
Yeah, I still don't get that choice, but it's all right.
Yeah, this is where I like a group activity like this. I might have to recuse myself from it because I'm a like screamy guy to get pumped up. Like I'm like Slipknot, Alexis on Fire. Like my the one I would put on would probably be This Could Be Anywhere in the World by Alexis, because it's this slow build to a heavy screamy and then sing-songy chorus. So you get a little bit of everything, and it builds and builds and builds. And my favorite pitcher entrance or walk-up song of all time is when BJ Ryan for the Blue Jays used to come out to Duality by Slipknot, and the old LED boards, like the first gen technology of LED, would have the fake flames everywhere at Skydome. So I would have to either back out of this or sit down and think about, hey, what's something I can get that's a little more accessible for the entire group.
No, I think
bring in some fake flames and make it happen, man.
I think between the three of us, we can put together a pretty good playlist. Is all I'm saying. Yeah. You guys want to attempt?
We should probably do this. I actually would love to attempt this. And I actually would have a song already for Alex if I can go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
And like a fun fact, if people don't know, his book Prehistoric is available to pre-order on paperback out on Amazon December 5th. But my song and playlist is going to be solely by NBA players.
Wow.
And the music
I like that.
And music they've released. So for Alex, my song choice for you would be by C-Web Chris Webber.
Yeah.
Too Much Drama, because you are too much drama.
For people that are not just listening on the podcast, Lindsay is bringing out records from her collection, and she is holding up a Chris Webber record right now. This is incredible.
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar.
because
I wasn't
and because
familiar with your
and
game.
because I have more faith in Blake's
Yeah.
musical taste than yours, I'm gonna go with another C Web.
Wow.
Wow, featuring
Gangsta.
Corrupt from the Dog Pound.
Yeah, you got a
This-
street mix. You have an instrumental version. You have a
This is
radio edit. I
amazing.
tell you,
Do you-
that right there.
Do you think you could out Nardwar, Lindsay?
Oh, nobody can out Nardwar.
I'm
but I
gonna
will tell
label you as the new Nardwar. You think that's controversial? Yeah.
No, I'll take it. It's better than being the issue that you called me earlier.
What did
When it
I
comes
call-
You just said the Lindsay Dunn issue when we were trying to connect with her.
Oh, I thought you meant when I text you. I was like, "Are you gonna recommend Gangnam Style to me?"
Oh my
okay.
God, he did. I was like, I didn't cancel me. But for me, I would like to go with Brian McKnight
Oh,
featuring
man.
featuring the late Kobe
With
Bryant
Kobe,
song,
yeah.
Hold Me.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna have to hold me back because I'm gonna be making it rain beyond the arc and you can't stop me. So
Yeah.
those would be my first three choices.
That's amazing.
But what would your guys' choices for the
Blake,
playlist be?
Blake, what you got?
Jeez, I did not prep as much as NBA player cameos and stuff like that. I know there was some album back in the day that, like, obviously Shaq did his Shaq Fu stuff, but he was like the
Yes.
A&R on some records as well. Like he got like
Got all of
unofficially credited.
Yeah.
Obviously Allen Iverson's albums under the name Jules.
Oh yeah, David
bars.
David
We
Stern
got that, yeah.
wasn't too happy
Yeah,
about that.
but Lindsay,
you have the AI 40 bars record.
I do. I also have.
Can I buy that off you?
Absolutely not. I
Can
also
we
have the
negotiate on air?
1987 Lakers World Champions Just Say No, which features Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, AC Green, Magic Johnson, Brian Scott. It goes James Worthy and Coach Pat Riley even dropping.
why
some
does
lines
Pat
or bars.
Riley in that cartoon look like Barack Obama?
Also, can we go back to me buying Jules 40 bars off you? Yeah.
And do you want to know the best part? Is I have two
Why are you-
copies of it, and absolutely not.
You're
I like you.
yeah. But
and it's-
no.
no.
I just called
no,
you
and like, and
Nardwar
this-
on a national network. Yeah. That's
I
not good
know.
enough.
And then this is a promo copy
Oh
DJ
my
edition
God.
of 40 bars for those listening.
Can
it's
you
a promo
can you
copy.
bring it to the game tomorrow? I just want to be in the presence of it.
Well, as much as I like you, I don't trust you, and I feel like you're gonna steal it from me.
I get this a lot, don't worry.
No, like I would
Oh
bring it.
my god.
I know.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. So
Songs,
I
yeah.
log all my my
songs.
albums in Discogs, which is like to
Yes.
keep track of all your stuff.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, even 40 bars is a tough find in there. So
Yeah,
this
it's
is
a tough find.
you got to negotiate hard here, Lindsay.
Yeah, I do have weird. If I were to pregame, maybe a little Michelle Branch.
Oh
Pre-
yeah, because that
Taylor Swift, New
on the
Romantics.
defensive end, you need to be everywhere.
Yeah. Taylor Swift,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
yes.
Taylor
Yeah,
Swift,
mic
New
drop, mic
Romantics. I'm just
drop.
naming songs I've been listening to a lot lately. So
Lindsay, the one I was going to suggest for you, it's not NBA player related, but I know you're a big Always Sunny person. The guys singing Birds of War as they come to the wrestling, stomp, clap, stomp, stomp, clap. That's that's got to be you.
is this segment the white version of when Will and I just talk about Asian stuff for half an hour? Because what the hell is Slipknot, man? Shout out to Slipknot.
I wish I was wearing a Slipknot shirt today. So I look like AJ Soprano. I just wear a plain black hat and my Slipknot hat.
There, I get that reference. Hey, Sopranos theme song would be a sick playlist.
Yeah.
Playlist.
This would be a terrible playlist, but I also would like one that's just pure Spice Girls, and I feel like it
Yeah.
could get a lot of people like amped up. They play it at most sporting events.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Wannabe. Stop.
It's kid friendly, certainly.
No.
Maybe DJ Andre 905 needs to work a little bit of that in. The crowd was pretty sparse yesterday. Not blaming it on him,
Yeah.
but maybe go a little more kid friendly. Lindsay, we got to let you go. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
Anytime. Still not getting record, Alex. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Lindsay Dunn, City News TO sports and music reporter, Raptors 905 sideline reporter. We're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, Samson Folk of Raptors Republic will join us. I realize we haven't done a ton of Raptors talk yet this episode. That is going to change. We're going to go deep on the offensive growth that we're seeing a little bit at a time, as well as what is going into these Scotty Barnes and bench units, what they can do better, and what the plan is long-term. Samson Folk joins us next as the Raptors show continues on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network and Sportsnet 360. I'm Blake Murphy. No Will Liu today. Alex Wong taking a chill for the rest of the show as well. So we have tried to replace Will and Alex at the same time in that we've brought in another Raptors Republic person to take the Will spot and brought in another person in a black toque that doesn't cover their ears. So it's not actually effectively keeping them warm. It's Samson Folk of Raptors Republic. How are you and your sticky bandits looking hat?
I'm doing good. The cool thing actually is that I usually couple this with over-ear headphones, so it actually pairs together to give me full coverage.
If you're cold, they're cold. Let them inside the toque.
They're pretty well fortified though. They're like these big old things. You've seen them.
Yeah,
You like them actually.
yeah. They're good headphones. We're gonna talk serious basketball in this hour. Before we do that, though, we were just talking to Lindsay Dunn about the feature she did with a bunch of the Raptors assistant coaches about the pump up playlist that they have collectively put together. We have some issues with it. However, I wanted to ask you if, the two of us, Lindsay, Alex, Will, we're all about to head out onto the floor, warming up, shoot around, whatever, and we're doing a collective pump up playlist. What are you putting on there?
Pick up the phone.
Okay.
Young Thug.
Okay.
Big time. That's the one.
Yeah, this is obviously the age gap between you and me, Alex, and Lindsay was there. Alex is going, older school hip hop. Lindsay's bouncing all over the place. She's incredibly versatile, work
She picked
and
country?
music. I don't think she actually picked the song. I think she only picked like songs as a bit, like for me and Alex. And then she had a bunch of her vinyl out and was like, I have Chris Webber on vinyl. Like I would pick one off of this album and things like that. So.
Well, we both hail from Saskatchewan, so
There
we
you
might
go.
have had a similar music scene growing up. I don't know.
I met another Raptors Republic writer from Saskatchewan at the G League game.
Was it
yesterday.
Cody?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Big
Yeah.
shout out to Cody.
Yeah.
But that song's awesome. It's also from the summer of 2016, which people my age, that's a big year for music, 2016.
Yeah. That is the 2005 year in pop punk. And yeah, I remember it wasn't 2016, but not long after that, one of the things I did one year, because around the holidays, the locker room tends to be emptier with media, so you can do a little bit more fun stuff. I had all the Raptors pick their album of the year for me and built a playlist off of that. It was actually the championship year because Marc Gasol was there, or it was the run it back year. Marc Gasol was there though, because we were talking like Spanish.
It was
music.
around Christmas?
Oh yeah, so it would have had to be
So
the
it
run
would've
it back
been-
year
yeah.
because he wasn't there until February.
That's right.
Thank you for helping me figure it out.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, OG and I got into like ranking Young Thug records. So I don't remember the order he put them in, just that Patrick McCaw really disagreed. Anyway, let's talk about basketball. Let's start with that 905 note that we've been kicking around. Again, I wrote a story about it. It's up at sportsnet.ca today. I was out in Mississauga yesterday. But Samson, you're someone who does a ton of legwork heading into the draft. Talk to a lot of scouts, talk to a lot of draft people, watch a lot of film yourself. I remember you and I were hanging out shortly before the draft, and he was a guy that you were pretty sold on. It's not enough of a sample, I don't think, for anyone to write him off. But what have you seen so far? What concerns you or encourages you about what you've seen at the NBA level, what you've heard and read at the G League level?
There's one concern only. He's not hitting his jumper. And so basketball basically is the way everything is constructed. You work from a point of strength to put the defender at a disadvantage, and that compounds until you can help your teammates or score a basket on your own. Grady's major point of strength, and I know Bobby Webster came out afterwards and said, we had him in a tier of his own. He's a special type of off-ball player. He's an incredibly heady cutter. He has a great read for forming up off of drivers. He's moves really well and like makes burn cuts to open up stuff for teammates. He uses his gravity. He's great reading the floor. If you don't hit the jumpers, then nothing good is going to happen. It is, in some sense, a make or miss league, and he's just been missing a lot. I think his three-point percentage is, 24% maybe? That's marginally better than Pascal's this year, who had an 0 for 17 stretch. So basically...
And who also owns the worst three-point shooting season in NBA history.
That's true.
On his way up
Right.
to turning that into like a 30 to 33% shot.
Yeah.
He had to go through that.
Big time. So basically the jumper. And I've talked to quite a few scouts at this point. Leading up to the draft, I kind of wanted to talk about the mechanics of his jumper. I know that's been a hotly contested topic. I know people have been on the side of it's being changed. Grady came out yesterday and said nothing has been changed.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him a little bit more than
Sure.
because I talked to him one-on-one after the
Right.
scrum, and in the scrum he had said no, nothing changed. And then when we got into it a little bit, he was like, it's more, nothing's changed. It's more just like reminding me of like, hey, sometimes when you're stationary, you're off balance, you're a little too narrow. Like weirdly enough, his mechanics on movement are where he's like pristine.
Yes.
He just like so naturally squares up his feet, gets a wide, strong base. And then it's more when he's stationary that it can, get away from him and then becomes a little more army in the thing. But yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone around the Raptors is concerned mechanically. He's certainly not.
Yeah. I talked to Josh Codanero, a professional scout, about this, and we did a video kind of breaking down his shot mechanics. And he talks about how in movement, Grady, he stays square up top, right? The legs can be going everywhere after the shot, but he has kind of a sling up top. And so shot mechanic people or shot doctors, they talk about points of failure in a jumper. And Grady, because there's quite a bit of motion in his, he has more points of failure than a lot of like great shooters, which means he might be, you did Jose Barrios, for example, the very athletic wind up, all that kind of stuff. There's more points of failure, but he's supposed to be a good enough athlete in Barrios and a good enough shooter in Grady to get everything back to normal. And I think that's probably just what's happening. And that athleticism and more points of failure also means that Grady has a higher release. It means he can shoot off more dynamic types of movement. And basically, we're just waiting on everything to come back to center for him. And once it does, then great.
And to your point, though, if the shot doesn't drop, all these other things he does well will not matter. You can be the greatest off-ball mover. Andre Roberson was like the best cutter and offensive rebounder for a wing in the league at one point. And it didn't matter because once his defense slid even a tiny bit because of the knees, it's like, well, you don't shoot enough. You don't shoot enough to be out here on the floor. That's obviously an extreme example of a non-shooter, but if your shots don't drop, it can be hard to find a spot for you. So Grady Dick has not really contributed offensively. The Toronto Raptors have been about what we've expected them to be offensively, but things have slowly, and we're talking small steps here, so no one's saying it's good, but things have slowly moved in the right direction in the half-court offense. They were in dead last in the league for a little while. They're up to 27th, which is right around where they were. They finished last year in 25th, I believe, and it's been kind of a steady inching up. The Cleveland game was a step back, but that's a team that obviously introduces a ton of defensive challenges with all of their length and the number of good individual defenders they have in the front court. So this slow climb from league worst and at one point process Sixers level bad in the half court to now it's not, we said coming in the year, if you guys defend like heck, have a good transition offense, you can be 20th in the league in half court offense. They're not there yet, but it's slowly getting there. What are you seeing high level before we dig into some of the specifics?
I think basically it's an exercise in seeing how much lack of shooting you can get away with on the floor. And while they've gotten better shooting performances, most importantly from like Dennis and Scotty, both of them shooting well above, expected rates and expected efficiency, I think most teams don't respond to a lot of their pet actions the way that they might want to. They can't drag and pull defenders all over the court to open up as many driving lanes as they want, and they have to try and succeed in spite of that. A good way to succeed against packed defenses is to do it with a post-up, because a post-up is slow, working your way downhill, while also being able to stay on pace and be able to account for help defense. And you can also quickly respond with an escape dribble to move the help defense and shift it to open up laydowns into the post, to open up three-point shots for other players. And that's easier to do against packed defenses than these straight line drives where people are going to try and undercut you for charges. People are going to make you pick up your dribble. You'll have to be without a dribble, dead, trying to identify where it is on the floor. People are going to be hawks on your skip passes. So the post-up is like a salve to that. And it's still not perfect offense. It's still not that good. I think they're maybe like 13th or 15th over the past 10 games or so. It's a slow climb for sure. But in spite of their limitations, I'm actually kind of impressed they got to this point, to be quite honest.
So another note on the post-ups, and yeah, it is, this is 17 games in, and this was maybe hey, by mid-season, if they could be a little better. So that's encouraging, I think, is that like, hey, you're still not creating the advantages you would like to create, but you're finding ways to score a little bit more. Not enough yet. With respect to those post-ups, I pulled some data for a piece Grange had up at sportsnet.ca this morning or last night. I forget when it went up, but good piece. And I wrote about it a couple weeks ago, some of the numbers. Pascal, the number one player in basketball right now among players with more than 30 post-ups in terms of points per possession when he shoots, gets to the line, turns the ball over, or passes to a teammate who immediately shoots. So those plays have been very high yield. And that's kind of counter to what we normally see. Part of the reason the post-up has gone out of vogue is, there are only 2 points instead of 3 points. And because, that's something that modern defenses know how to defend a little bit better. And while some teams still use it effectively, league-wide, the efficiency on it is just not there. But something our pal Louis Zatzman wrote about for 538 last year is it's still a pretty effective playmaking hub. And to use it as a playmaking hub, you have to have the threat of scoring out of that. It's not something we've seen Scotty Barnes do a ton. I think he's capable of it. Your piece last year or in the offseason about his post-ups and his hook shot effectiveness, we know he has that in him. But the Raptors primarily have run through Pascal Siakam in those situations. What do you see from Siakam in those, and what makes him so effective as a kind of dual score pass threat out of those situations?
It's derived from the same difficulty teams have when they funnel guys middle, and then you see superstars eat in the middle, guys who can go to that mid-range shot making. If you can't funnel a guy to the middle of the court, a crowded middle court, then you can't funnel a guy anywhere. Like you can't really keep guys above the break. You can't switch everything and stop stars from getting downhill. You have to load up in a team defense concept. So you can load up on Pascal, but if he's comfortable hitting a 12 to 13-foot jump shot on reliable efficiency, that means that you're going to be giving up points. It means that the Raptors can always have a run stopper. It means that they can always get back and set their defense. And it also means that Pascal, that's the baseline, that's the worst shot, is this pretty reliable little pop shot. And it can get incrementally better where it's like spinning off of his guy, getting to the rim, and that can be a layup, or that can be the help side defender at the bottom shifting over, and a lay down. All of this rotation can come before he even picks up the ball. He can read the double coming from the top or the bottom, find a shooter wide open, find a guy under the basket wide open, just depending on how they shape up to his post up. There's a lot of options, and I talked about this maybe 3 years ago with Caitlin Cooper about it's a loving basketball episode of the podcast, and we were talking about how the post was becoming this burgeoning playmaking hub. Lewis would end up writing about it a fair bit later and kind of breaking down all the statistics for it. A lot of teams and a lot of guards, they aren't really familiar with their like post automatics, and they screw up their coverages a lot of times. And it's very hard because if you're playing pick and roll coverage, you're away from the basket and it seems less immediate. You might get a pull-up three that beats you. But if you mess up a coverage in the close proximity of the post, if the low man isn't close enough, it's a layup. And especially when they hunt out these mismatches where Pascal has the size and can completely dominate. Like we talked to him after he played Drew Holiday. We were in the presser, and Drew Holiday is a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
He can stop anybody. And Pascal still was like, no, I felt pretty comfortable backing him down, getting to my spot.
Especially against that team, if you can carve out that offense, right?
Yeah. So you never want to build the whole ship out of post-ups. You don't want to build the whole plane out of it. But to be able to go to that, which they have been more and more, and there's a correlation for a rising offensive rating, it's a really nice you just back channel. Okay, we can go to that whenever we need it.
So another thing that correlates with this offensive improvement, and this is maybe going to undercut some of what we're saying, is strength of schedule. They have, their offenses look the best when they're coming back against the 3-14 Washington Wizards, or when they're running up the score on the 2-15 Pistons. The Spurs come back. The Spurs are the third worst defense in basketball. Now, they have had some good nights against good teams. They've had some solid nights against good teams. Milwaukee has not been that good defensively yet, but they still introduced some challenges, things like that. The Cleveland game the other day was a step back. Let's keep this just focused on the Siakam post-ups for now, because, look, league-wide, guys are going to shoot worse in losses than in wins because you lost. Like you lost.
Usually, yeah.
The direction here of causation is guys shoot worse, you lose. It's not, it's not overcomplicated. One thing we're noticing, though, is that those post-up opportunities, whether as a scorer or a passer, have been less readily available against the better defensive teams. Now, maybe this is a quirk of, they played a lot of good defenses at the start and the schedule's turned a little easier since. But why, theoretically, or in what you've seen, obviously a better defensive team is just better defensively, but it seems that those post actions and those kind of back pocket advantages that you mentioned are disproportionately affected by the quality of an opposing defense. Is that fair to say?
I think yes, in the same way that the quality of the opposing defense will always impact points per possession. It's maybe instructive that they did quite well against Boston with it. It's instructive that their half-court offense was actually good against Orlando. They just turned the ball over a bunch and didn't get rebounds, and that obviously they had 20 less possessions in that game than Orlando. It was insane. Yeah. And
they played last year's Raptors team, basically.
Exactly. And Orlando actually made a lot of shots at the rim, and they take a lot there, so that hurts. But basically, there are teams who are good on defense and teams who are bad on defense. And the post up makes sure that you defend in a team concept because basically no team leaves you alone. Even Indiana.
Right. No team's going to let you go middle.
Exactly. Indiana has like a team wide mandate that like we don't really send two to the ball. And they doubled Pascal's post ups. That's how overwhelming and hard he is.
They don't even send one to the ball a lot of the time, though.
and that's the thing, right? Like Pascal is very hard to stop in the post. And so he's going to create that defensive response, even in these games where it doesn't go well, even in the game where they ended up winning, right? Like they have 7 missed threes down the stretch. And a lot of those possessions came out of the post up. And it's a make or miss aspect of it is like if you run a post up and Siakam collapses the defense and you immediately pass out and a guy just misses an open three, it's a slow play. It looks like bad offense, but you got an open shot and you missed it. And that's kind of like tough. They have to be able to counter the post up in some ways too. That's been the big thing. The post up, other teams can affect the volume by overloading and moving the ball elsewhere. The Raptors have to be not starting every possession with a post up, obviously, not overwhelming, but they have to be able to go to other stuff. And guys have to be able to score off of the second side actions. If you get the defense collapsed, you've basically done your job. Any coach will tell you that. And you want to play in a team concept, but if you have a guy who can break the defense immediately, that was a pretty quiet snap. Yeah. If you can break the defense immediately, I mean, it puts the rest of your teammates in an advantageous position, and you have to be able to work out of that. And Pascal, on the other side of things, has to also be better at working off other players' advantages created too.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of the Scotty pick and roll stuff that I want to talk to you about. You had mentioned, and this was in specific relation to Pascal's post-ups. You said some laydowns or dump-offs, if you prefer, finding cutters, things like that. It does seem like the chemistry is improving. I think as you're trying to install, they're not reinventing the wheel, but this is a pretty the way they want to play is a good shift from the last couple of years. Yep. They're second in the league in total passes per game. We've talked about passes on its own is not the goal. You can be a high pass team and a bad offense if you're turning it over and you don't hit shots. But they're also 5th in assists now, which is, higher than they were early in the season. They're 3rd in potential assists. So how many shot opportunities are you creating off of the pass? These things are slowly trending upward. And again, there's a quality of opponent component. But are you starting to see a little bit more chemistry, whether it's passing out of that post, whether it's the big operating out of the high post and those high-low feeds that we see a little bit? Even something like, whether it's Dennis or Scotty as the initiator, that chemistry with Jakob Poeltl on the roll and using Jakob Poeltl then as a pass to make a second pass. Are you seeing some of that stuff come that just wasn't there out of the gate?
Definitely. And as far as the passing, last season and many seasons prior to this, the Raptors, a lot of their passing was east-west. They have a lot more north-south passing, and I think a lot relative to the rest of the league. Being able to pass going downhill is a super big deal. And even something as small as, like, we'll talk about the Scotty pick and roll and coverages and stuff like that, but Pascal's pick and roll with Jakob has gotten a lot better recently, too. I think he started out 1 for 12 or 1 for 15 to start the year. They couldn't get anything going. Pascal did a bad job spying out the guy in the corner when teams were overloading. Now teams are kind of tagging differently, and there's more of those pocket passes to Jakob. Well, maybe not the bounce pass, but hitting him in stride. He's made more of those. Dennis, I think you're never going to get a ton of efficient offense from him, but he has to be able to chew possessions and move the Raptors through their actions efficiently. And all this stuff is slowly getting better, but maybe the thing that's most impressive is that the Raptors, so much of their offense is based off of the mismatch at the 2, 3, and the 4. The OG, Pascal, Scotty of it all. And being able to get those back screens, a lot of it is run out of the Princeton offense, to get guys going downhill or a slice screen and just have Jakob pass it into these guys. I've been surprised at how high teams play on Jakob now, but it's good news for the Raptors. It gives them more space to create those isolated, maybe like post-entry or high-low feeds to one of Pascal or Scotty on the inside against a smaller player. And they've found a lot more success on those, and even having to add some like twirl wrinkles and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really cool to see them get better at that. But again, these are small steps. Like last season, they were 26th or 25th in half-court offense, 12th overall because they were so good in transition. You can try and follow the same recipe this year. It's just they're low in the overall ranking, but they're also like, by the numbers, they're below the league average by a lot. You can be the 25th best half-court offense and be close to the like 18th or something like that. That's not the case now, but they can get to that point.
No,
Defense,
they're 5.8 points per 100 half-court possessions off league average.
which is tough,
Yeah,
obviously.
That's a lot.
So-
I mean, they're about 100 possessions in a game. So,
But it's also trended up from being like 82 or 83
Yeah.
to what, 91 now?
yeah. At one point, I think it was only 2 weeks ago, I looked, and it was the last time there was a half-court offense that bad over an entire season was the Process Sixers.
Tough.
Yeah, but it's gone north. Portland's still down that.
Yes, they're at
Process
83 or
Sixers,
84?
86 now. But
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so one other thing about the offense that I've noted is trending in the right direction. And I maybe only noticed because when I did my early season, hey, here are the offensive trends I've seen in a small sample and I'm keeping an eye on. They were comically bad as a cutting team.
Yes.
They have nudged up to 26th in points per possession off of a cut. That is very low, but scoring off of cuts are one of the highest yield possessions that you can have. If you finish a possession via the cut, a cut almost only comes when a guy manages to get open underneath the defense or around defensive inattention. It's a really efficient play. If you can get more of them, that's great. And they're 7th in volume. Is that a good kind of bellwether for you? Do you think about, like, if we were trying to pick a stat or a small handful of stats that are indicators of that half-court chemistry?
I think you want to be cutting. Like when Darko is mic'd up, you could just hear like cut, move, keep cutting, fill. Like he's just trying to usher these guys through so many parts of the defense. And there also might be the Raptors might score more by like they make a cut and it pays off in a way that it's not counted as a cut.
Yes.
So like if they're running, there's 3 guys on one side of the court, right? Pascal, Scotty, and Jakob is dribbling over there, and Pascal cuts under the rim to empty the side for a Scotty, Jakob, be it dribble handoff or pick and roll. What a lot of other players do if they're Pascal would filter out to the weak side corner. But what Pascal can do is he can hang out under the basket in the dunker spot if they step up to Scotty, because Scotty can make those really good high-low reads, as can Jakob if anybody cheats. And if Pascal's guy has to step up, if Scotty gets, the step, then Pascal can show in the dunker spot. And that I don't think would maybe count as a cut. I'm not sure how they would identify that.
They would, if Pascal finished that play, I think they would count it as a
Sure.
cut, but they're not, we'd have to go to second spectrum to find
And
like
poke
off-ball
around.
cuts and stuff like that. And this is the thing with any play type data is
Right.
like, we're using it as a tool to help us simplify what
Yeah.
is obviously very complex possession.
Everyone can see a cut happening.
Yeah.
But the computer sees all of them, tracks them, and then spits out a number that you're like, they're 7th. They do it the 7th most, which is good. Cutting is, of course, really important. Orlando is a really good example of this, that you need, and the Raptors are 26th in points per chance or points per possession, obviously, because of that spacing. If you cut a ton and your team shoots really well, that points per chance or points per possession is going to be probably top 5. Orlando is a team, I don't know what their cutting numbers are.
They're 4th in points per possession off of cuts, despite being one of the only teams worse than the Raptors at shooting.
Hell yeah. And the thing about that, too, is that they finish at the rim on a ton of those cuts. Like, if you go to the effective field goal percentage, expected numbers, Orlando might be first in the NBA in expected points to score based on where they take their shots, because they just pass to the paint, and drive to the paint. And the Raptors, they're leaning into that, and which is what they wanted to do after a season where they spent so much time in the short mid-range and the mid-range, and they're trying to slowly shift that shot chart to more like Kyle Lowry levels where it's layups and threes, I guess.
And yes, the Magic are first in location, expected, effective field goal percentage, narrowly ahead of the Pacers. So good for those
Pacers are
Orlando
nuts,
Magic.
man.
Hey, guess what? Length is really important on both sides of the basketball. So the Magic are getting it done. Maybe we need to dig in further. Like, it's a running joke on the show that they're my Magic. But
Sure.
maybe we do need to dig in a little further. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to set up tonight's game a little bit. But as we continue to talk about the offense and these small steps, we're seeing a pretty big step in terms of Scotty Barnes' pick and roll play. We'll go a little deeper on that as the Raptors show continues. Me, Blake Murphy, Samson Folk sitting in with us on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm Blake Murphy alongside Samson Folk of Raptors Republic. He is still in studio with us as we look at some of the Raptors' small but maybe meaningful improvements on the offensive side of the ball over the course of the season thus far. We'll also take a look ahead at tonight's Raptors-Nets game in just a little bit. Samson, we hinted at this. We touched upon it, but we mostly talked about the non-Scotty parts of the offense in that first part. And those are small gains. I mean, the Siakam post-up stuff isn't new. That's something you always knew you could go to. Some of these, more system-oriented, the high-low passes, the cutting, things like that are small improvements that are notable and important. But the most important change to the Raptors offense over these first 17 games versus what we maybe expected coming in is Scotty Barnes has taken a big step forward as a pick-and-roll operator. We'll dive into some of the specifics, but high level, what are you seeing? Are we seeing that enough even?
I think so. I talked to Caitlin Cooper about this, and she had a very Midwestern.
We should have just had her on.
Yeah, she had a very Midwesternism. She said pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered in regards to
how much you want to go to your core offensive thing.
Exactly. How much, because Scotty, you have the numbers up there as far as like usage. He's doing quite well, and I still think by the numbers, especially if you include passes, the Scotty pick and roll is better than any other pick and roll that has run a handful of possessions, let's say on the Raptors, which is a huge change, and it's not completely dependent on beating a switch afterwards, which is Pascal's pick and rolls were good last year, but it was a consequence of you switch the pick and roll, and then
it was the DeMar system of like, okay, every play is a pick and roll, but it's really a pick and roll to generate not an ISO but a one-on-one attack.
Yes, it's a vehicle to go to other skills, whereas you're not scoring in flow. Flow offense is important. It gets more people involved. It gets the defense more shifted. It allows like role players to get better shots, all that kind of stuff. And Scotty has been providing flow offense out of the pick and roll, and really impressively so. Part of it is that teams shockingly have already started to respond to his jumper, which kudos to Scotty. His jumper progression has been insane, whether it's from the mid-range, whether it's from three. The jump he's making, I didn't see any single person predict this. It's always a credit to players who build and work on their game. I know there was a ton of stuff out there about Scotty's work ethic last season. I know Masai said he had a conversation. That stuff can be blown out. NBA players work for their skills. NBA players work for their game. Scotty has brought himself to a level as a shooter that is years ahead of schedule.
37.6% on threes. And this is a little inflated because his short mid-range, his 10 to 16 footers haven't been very effective at all. But the 16 foot to 3-point line range, he's shooting 62%. That'll come down, but I'm pretty certain the 10 to 16 foot range will come up. I don't think he's going to be 1 for 4 on like elbow jumpers very often. So the mid-range shooting is there to back it up. So what is that? When we first saw him starting to hit these threes,
sure,
my assumption was, well, that's really good because teams are not going to respect your jump shot, and it's important that you make them pay for that. It's probably going to take half a season for teams to adjust to that. The fact that they're tweaking that now, they're maybe changing their scouts on him. How is that going to open up even more for him in the pick and roll?
So the big thing, obviously, and we saw it against the Bucks, is that the Bucks play lock and trail defense because they have Brook Lopez waiting at the rim.
So lock and trail, for anyone who doesn't know, the big is going to drop back. The main defender is going to fight over the screen and either rear view contest or try to weasel their way back into position in front of the ball handler.
And this is very effective against a slew of pick and roll ball handlers because guards don't want to go one-on-one against Brook Lopez at the rim. We talked about earlier in the episode funneling guys into the uncomfortable, crowded middle of the court and seeing how they do there. Scotty can kind of bypass all that. He's made a few shots this year against like the drop as a mid-range jumper pull-up guy. But as far as if you funnel Scotty towards the big, it's different than your lead guard. Scotty is like, who's down there? I want it. This is a guy, his first playoff points were a post-up from the corner on Tyrese Maxey where he drop-stepped to the middle, saw Joel Embiid, and said, are you going to meet me there? And dunked it. He wants the smoke, all of it.
Seeking out Giannis for the Giannis push-off.
Yes, exactly. That like shoulder, forearm, just like, boof, get off me.
Who was it against the Spurs? He just buried on one, too.
Oh, Sohan.
Yeah.
And Sohan
changed his hair color with that dunk.
Sohan thought he was going to like give the space and then meet him at the rim, and he was nowhere close. Scotty also had that Giannis in a game in early November last year on Kevin Durant as well, like that get off me for a dunk. He's an immensely imposing downhill player. Darko Rajakovic said, if Scotty's going downhill, if you have to close out on him, God help you. lock and trail functionally puts a player downhill the same way a closeout does. You're working from behind. Not every team plays it like that, but Scotty is responding to different coverages at the level and different coverages in the weak side and making a ton of great passing reads with his benefit of world-class passing vision at a height that most people aren't.
And that's part of the benefit when teams are searching for these, like the Magic, to go back to Franz and Paolo are 6'9", 6'10" creators. The Raptors, Siakam and Barnes. The Thunder with large guards and a guy we won't mention. The idea is like, yes, point guards are better passers nominally, but if you can put that skill in a body where you can look up and see over it, like there's a reason there's no short quarterbacks.
Yeah. That's you. When you make a pass, defenses occupy that space with length. And the reason why Anthony Davis is maybe the greatest roller of all time is he gives you more vertical space. You suddenly can access the ball, can go to different spots. And what Scotty, as a tall passer, does is he starts the vertical space higher, and you can create these faster, more direct passes, be it to the corner or to the roll man. Whereas like Fred VanVleet, a lot of the passes he makes is via the bounce to the roller because he can't make that straight across pass because he can't access the airspace. Scotty lives there. He likes the weather there. He passes from there. He's tremendous. And also some of that is Scotty does a really good job. We talked about this beforehand when we were going the deep dive for Scotty, is engaging the switch quicker. Don't let it settle. If they're switching to create the edge so you can't turn it, if they're switching to just kind of like dead the possession, whatever, but you have to engage it quickly because a switch, while some teams think this is good, it sets it back to zero. You can pursue that action quick enough that is not truly zero. And you can try and get the edge on a switch and bring help from elsewhere. You can try and go back middle on the switch and get the guy who just switched off of you to step up and then effectively after the pick and roll, create a blitz. And then you can lay down to your big. Like Scotty's doing all this kind of stuff against more aggressive coverages and some more conservative coverages. And this is all obviously helped out by an improvement as a ball handler, a major step up as a shooter, and just overall, he's a supercomputer on the court. The more you see, everybody knows this, everyone who's played basketball, the more you see, the more you know. And the more you can make these premeditated decisions to beat a defense you know that's coming.
And this is what we talk about with lead guards a lot of the time. It's something we experienced here in Toronto with DeMar. It's like, okay, well, what is your offensive game? And then that's one thing. You have a bag. That's those are table stakes, right? Like that's what you have to have the ball in your hand at the NBA level. And then it's like, okay, this is how a defense reacts to you. What can you do with that? And then it's like, okay, I anticipate what a defense is. And then the nenext level is, well, I already know if I do this, the defense is going to do this. So I'm thinking ahead and I'm manipulating them to do what I want to do. And that's the thing. That's the element that we see little glimpses of with Scotty, but you probably need another, 100, another 250 possessions like this for, even someone who thinks the game and reads the game at that level to really, see all those iterations. So what flows from this, I guess, is he's been effective, right? So I could mention the points per possessions. It's 1.01 when he either shoots, turns it over, goes to the line, or passes to someone who finishes. That's a strong number. It's not as high as the Pascal post-up number we were talking about, but that's because pick and rolls are just...
You want good things all over everywhere.
Exactly.
Like you need more than one option.
Yes. Yeah. If the post-up was your only option, you would probably score 0.000 points on it. Same with the Scotty pick and roll. So 1.01 is a very good number for a high volume pick and roll operator. Of the 84 qualified players that I looked at, that's 36th. So that's pretty good. So already you're only looking at the 84 guys who do it the most. And 84 is just because I put in a per game.
He was 39th percentile last year.
Yeah.
So already you're making a huge, he's what, 70th?
Yeah.
So he's,
you're going from the lower third to the top of the middle third.
Yes.
Basically. So my question that would flow from this is, on average, it works out to about 5.5 instances per game where the Raptors are finishing a possession that started with the Scotty Barnes pick and roll and finished via that pick and roll. So like you said earlier, it doesn't account for Scotty passes out and then 3 swing passes later. There's a 3. It's not capturing every advantage, but that 5.5 per game number only ranks 72nd in the league. Now, he's a big forward. He's sharing creation opportunities with Dennis Schroeder and Pascal Siakam, but that's about the number 2.5 pick and roll initiator on an average team. They need to get that number higher.
I do think it behooves them to get it higher. And the big thing is that, like, if you go by touches, Dennis is first.
Mm-hmm.
Scotty's pretty close behind. And then there's like a bit of a leap, and then it's Pascal. Pascal is third in touches, but his right now have gotten a lot more intentional
Right.
than
Like
Scotty's.
Yeah, you're looking at it because his usage rate has climbed just a hair above Scotty's.
Yes. So they're over the course of these 17, 18 games we're looking at, they're getting the ball and doing a similar amount of things. And, Pascal is a more reliable half-court creator. You want a ton of reliable half-court creators. You can look at these egalitarian offenses that can hand the ball off to like any between 4 to 6 guys to give them an advantageous action at any point in time. And then once things get a little bit more, compact and tough on defense, you go to your stars to make shots out of difficult situations or create easy looks for role players. Scotty, I think that some of these possessions, especially with the bench lineup, maybe they don't have the spacing they want to run a lot of these pick and rolls. Maybe they want to put the ball more into motion stuff because they've seen like Malachi Flynn's 8 points in however many minutes came as a consequence of motion offense. They want to emulate and get more of the bench guys scoring. But I think the bench is a good opportunity, whether it's with OG next to him or 4 other bench players, for Scotty to get some of these possessions, to work through what coverages he's getting, to put him in like these. Because the pick and roll, we talk about playmaking, but the first thing you do is you get around a screen.
Yeah.
You look to score.
I mean, that's where you're looking, right?
This is what you want to do. So I think that there's some aggressiveness on Scotty's side of things that he needs to take ownership of himself and like, maybe I try and score a little bit more. That would be helpful. But I also think that the Raptors have to be more intentional with their use of Scotty. The same way that I thought they were deeply, I don't know why, but for the first 7 games of the season, and I wrote this piece about this, they're not using Pascal in any of his strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using him a lot as a burn cutter, as an off-ball screener, and as a three-point shooter. You just talked about it. He's the best, by the numbers, post-up player in the NBA. He's not better than Jokic, but by the numbers so far, it's been a great action. The Raptors' rise in their offense is because they leaned into stuff that works. We've seen they have stuff that works with Scotty. It behooves them to try it out more often. Maybe the efficiency goes down. Maybe it's tough. But there's also the other side of things where Scotty is the future. He's already shown an ability to have like these big burgeoning progressions in skill. And why not give this guy a bunch of possessions that you can build offense out of?
And if the logic is you're running these Scotty and bench units because you think he can eventually be a guy who floats bad lineups like that and you want to see it and you're trying to expand, like, okay, well, let's let him do the things that you would have him do in those lines. Now, I personally am, and we talked about this a little bit. I know you wrote about it today. Those Scotty and 4-man bench units, I think it's more of a personnel issue than like Scotty's numbers drop dramatically in terms of efficiency. The usage goes up. I think this is much more who are the 4 guys that are out there with him. We see a significant improvement in the numbers when, say, OG is out there and it's just 3 bench players. What in your estimation, is that the justification for this? One, like Darko is trying to find a rotation that includes 10 guys and doesn't play the main guys 40 minutes. But also like, hey, let's see what Scotty can do with it.
I think that there's 2 things meeting here. I think you can basically do anything with the Raptors and sweep it under the rug of it's Scotty developing. And I also think Darko came into this team, and a lot of fans thought that the depth, I thought the bench would be better. The bench,
McDaniels was good before he got here.
Sure. And like there was expectations of his jumper, which had been up and down. There were lots of different types of expectations. And while some of that has come around, like Malachi is certainly a better player now in this system than he was last season, I think that Darko is looking at a bench that has been kind of feckless, and he's saying, how do I make this work? How do I make rotation simple? And Scotty is the sacrificial lamb for this. It's like, go see if you can carry it. I looked at Luka Doncic in his 3rd year, where he was first team All-NBA. He floated his bench lineups. They were a negative, but negative 3.3 over almost 600 possessions.
If you can play 4 bench players and only narrowly lose, that's, as weird as it sounds, a win if you're a good team because you're expecting your starters to. Now, the Raptors starters haven't won recently, but.
And Pascal did that last season. He floated 4 bench player lineups, but he only played 99 possessions of that. Scotty's almost at 200 at this point. They're going to that a lot
because they never played 9 guys last year. It was just rare.
And they're going. Yeah, it would have been games where other guys were injured, right? And they're going to that a lot. And Scotty is not enough of an offensive hub to kind of carry those lineups yet. But you're trying to get that progression out of him, so you see what happens. And also, it obviously makes Darko's job as a coach easier from a rotation standpoint.
Sure,
he's like, okay, I know. Because from my point of view, I think, well, if Scotty and OG plus 3 bench players can win minutes, you can rest. That's like guaranteed rest for Dennis, guaranteed rest for Jakob, guaranteed rest for Pascal, and Pascal plus Schroeder and Jakob, and just Pascal.
That's the other thing is all the other transitional lineups have been pretty good, and including like when Scotty is the first sub out and Gary subs in, that lineup's been the third best lineup in basketball with at least 50 minutes played together, I think. So like obviously that lineup is good with Scotty, and Scotty would benefit from that if say Dennis came out or OG came out or something like that. But yeah, weirdly, like Scotty is almost wearing a little bit a rotation pattern that helps the other transition lineups survive more.
Yeah, Scotty, the sacrificial lamb thing is like totally true. Scotty, it doesn't like the on-off numbers you see Scotty is struggling. That's not a struggle. That's just like the context that he's constantly being used in and what he's being asked to do.
It's a descriptive stat, not a prescriptive stat.
Exactly. And the Raptors are trying to find a way to make like a host of their lineups work. And if Pascal can win minutes with OG and Scotty off the floor, that's a huge deal. If Scotty and OG can team up to win minutes with Pascal off the floor, that's a huge deal. You have a method to get all three of your best players rest, but Darko's still going away from that a little bit to play a lot of possessions at this point of Scotty plus four other bench guys that have been really tough so far.
They have been tough. We'll see how that looks tonight. The Raptors are going to play against the Nets. It is their final in-season tournament game. It does not matter for the Raptors. It matters for the Nets. It potentially matters for the Celtics and Magic as well. To take you through it again, if the Raptors beat the Nets, the Celtics are done. Or I guess the Celtics could still get the wild card depending on how point differential shakes out. But the Celtics don't play tonight, so they're not in control of their own destiny here. The Raptors, this is my in-season championship now, as Raptors win tonight. So the Celtics, I mean, maybe they sneak in on the wild card, but they can't win the pool. It's the Magic's pool then. But if the Raptors were to lose, then there are 3-team tie scenarios. There are 2-team tie scenarios where Brooklyn wins. So a lot on the line there, a lot on the line around basketball. Tonight's the last night of the in-season tournament league-wide, and there are only 2 of the 8 in-season tournament quarterfinal spots locked up. So 16 teams still fighting for those remaining 6 spots. Raptors don't really care about that. They'll be in action against the Nets in just a regular season game. It's time now for Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Take a chance. The Raptors are 1.5-point underdogs. The over-under set at 224 for this one. Nick Claxton was originally on the injury report. He's going to play. Ben Simmons and Cam Thomas are out. So in Cam Thomas, the Nets are down about 27 points per game there. He's been by far their highest scorer. Cam Johnson is probable. Dennis Smith Jr. is questionable. On the Raptor side, Christian Koloko remains out. Grady and the 2As remain with the 905. So to review that, Claxton in, Simmons and Thomas out, Johnson and Smith Jr. TBD. When you look at this one, Samson, hearing that Nick Claxton is in after all, how does that change what the Raptors are looking to do here? And maybe they just played a Cavs team with 2 Nick Claxtons out there, so at least they've got a recent look at it.
I think that offensively, it does change things. It makes the Raptors' job a little bit more difficult. You mentioned Scotty's usage, and you said that's maybe like a 2.5 pick and roll type of guy. I think that the Nets play like 3 guys who all get like a 1.5 or 2 as far as like usage in the pick and roll. They're going to run a ton of pick and roll against Raptors. The biggest motivator is that Jakob has been much better at creating like the edge, not allowing the middle, and working in concert with the player who's defending the ball handler. So the Raptors, I think, will have a means to bottle up the Nets like lifeblood in the pick and roll. That's my expectation. I don't know if that happens, but I think it probably will. And then Nets will have to make more plays out of broken plays. And usually teams who shoot threes really well do well on broken plays.
Yeah, they're third in 3-point shooting and third in corner volume. So they get to those efficient spots even in broken situations.
And so the ball is going to find shooters. The Raptors have to not quit at the 8-second mark when it looks like they've deaded the possession. They have to be really mindful of, a team that cuts and a team that is going to fill corners and a team that is going to hit shots and make backbreakers and stuff like that. And there's pull-up shooting talent on the team too. So you want to bottle everything up, keep the play in front of you, and make sure that your ball handlers have like these good rear view contests. Make sure that you sit on the shooting hip, and you want to play that style of defense, and you want Jakob to hold down the middle, which he was phenomenal against Darius Garland. He was phenomenal against Donovan Mitchell. If they can play the same level of defense from Jakob and from whether it's Scotty stepping in at the 5 or Precious, I think that they're in a good spot, even if Nick Claxton does complicate like a front court situation.
All right, so we got me, Nets offensive possessions working, even though we're very broken.
Sure.
Yeah, and color me skeptical that Dorian Finney-Smith and Lonnie Walker IV are going to continue shooting like 50% on threes. There's a little bit of regression to here. Do you give? I mean, look, if you give them open looks, they'll hit them.
Lonnie and Donnie are pretty cool.
Yeah,
I call him Donnie.
Yeah, I got it. You put OG on Mikal Bridges in this one with no Cam.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
I put OG on if I want their offense to look any sort of way. I trust OG basically above any other defender in basketball. Like maybe he's not as impactful as a Rudy Gobert in his best year because he affects everything around the rim. But if you want OG to move an offense into spots on the floor, to be kind of the shepherd who herds the offensive sheep to like, this is where you go. I'm going to ice a pick and roll and shift you here. Then I'm going to play in the shooting pocket here. And I'm going to be able to block the pass that you want to make as an outlet. Just to kind of like move whoever's guiding the offense into uncomfortable positions repeatedly, make sure they shoot less. That's what OG Anunoby does every game against a big, against a guard, against a wing. And I think that they can shift a lot of the Nets' pet actions just by throwing OG on to Mikal.
Well, this is the number 8 offense, or sorry, number 8 defense. No, number 8 offense. My notes are a little bit of a mess today relative to normal. Number 8 offense against number 9 defense. Again, yeah, pretty balanced offense. They don't go to the free throw line a lot. No, Thomas is big, but they do shoot a ton of corner threes. They shoot the 3 well. They don't really, with Ben Simmons out, they don't play many guys who can't at least knock down a 3 if you leave them open. On the other side, this is the first time the Raptors have faced a really good transition defense in a while. The Nets are number 20 in defense overall, but they're 4th stopping the transition game. So that's an area where the Raptors generally really, really rely on that aspect. The Nets are also fairly conservative defensively. They're really good on their own glass. They don't force a ton of turnovers. So that's an area where the Raptors have been a little turnover prone. Maybe they can be a little safer today, but you're probably not getting a lot on the glass there. That was Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Take a chance. Samson, we got 2 minutes left here. What else are you looking for in tonight's game? Or let's round it up with the Scotty thing. When you look at who they could potentially have guarding Scotty, where do you think he eats tonight?
I like keeping him lower in the defense as an instinctual defender who makes reads. There are a lot of players who can only read one side of the floor. And like a great passer has a tough time seeing how other great passers might try to beat them defensively. Scotty, I think, has a tremendous read for reading what other players are trying to do and responding to it as the low man. He's also a really quick jumper. He's extremely long and has a great sense of what to do, which puts him in a lot of great defensive playmaking opportunities. I don't like when they move him higher into the defense because a lot of times he'll get blown by. It's not really his fault. He's guarding lower. We see Pascal get blown by. We see OG lesser than both those guys get blown by. But if Scotty is on the perimeter, it means that his defensive playmaking is not as effective if he gets beat. So yeah, I'd like him low.
Yeah, we'll see that tonight. We saw the opposite of that in the Cleveland game. That does it for us today. I've been Blake Murphy. We'll be back tomorrow on the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, please rate, review, etc. Thanks again to Shams Charania, Lindsay Dunn, Samson Folk. Producer and co-host Alex Wong. This says Blake Murphy, but I will thank myself a little bit. Our board producer, Derek Brandeo, as well as Frank Baraska, David Siss, and JR Manatad for helping us behind the scenes. We'll be back tomorrow to break this one down and set up another one. It's a back-to-back Phoenix Suns in town tomorrow. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.